Welcome to Health Vision, WOUB's program on medicine and health. I'm your host, Jackie Wolf, Associate Professor of Social Medicine at Ohio University. Today I'm going to be talking to Dr. Penny Shelton about menopause. Penny, it's so good to have you here today.
Thanks, Jackie.
Tell us what menopause is. How do physicians define menopause?
Menopause is the time when women stop menstruating, and that it occurs at different times for different women.
And it's kind of a retrospective event too, because it's, from what I understand, it's a year's cessation of menstruation. So you look back and say, if you haven't been menstruating for a year, you've achieved menopause. Am I using the language properly?
Right.
And what does that mean for our body? Exactly what kind of changes take place that a woman ceases to menstruate?
Well, the ovaries no longer are functioning, so they don't put out any eggs anymore. There's no monthly cycle because of that. What then happens is the hormones from the pituitary keep trying to stimulate the ovaries, and those hormones go very high in the body, and then they stay high for the rest of your life.
Oh, now that's interesting. So a lot of people think of menopause. Frankly, I always thought of it as kind of a lowering of hormones, but you're saying that the hormones actually elevate because the body keeps trying to stimulate the ovaries, which have ceased to function.
Yes. Actually, you're right as well. The estrogen, progesterone, and also testosterone are lower, but then your FSH and LH are higher, and your gonadotropin releasing hormone.
Okay, let's define some of these
okay,
things, because I'm sure for a lot of people we're speaking a foreign language.
Mm-hmm.
What exactly do progesterone and estrogen do? Now, those are the hormones that are being lowered, and what do they do during your reproductive years? What functions do they have?
The estrogen is continually going up in the first half of the menstrual cycle, and then you ovulate. A womb is prepared during that first half of the menstrual cycle for the egg to come down.
And after you ovulate, the progesterone levels start to rise.
Right.
And the estrogen levels start to fall. Is that right?
Actually,
or do those stay about the same?
Estrogen will have another rise after ovulation, and then progesterone and estrogen fall off together.
When you cease to be pregnant, when the body realizes that you're not pregnant. And that's what causes menstruation, is the falling of the progesterone and the estrogen.
Right.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now you mentioned that at menopause, okay, those levels then fall quite precipitously, but FSH, follicle stimulating hormone, and LH, luteinizing hormone, actually become quite high compared to the way they were when you were menstruating. Is that right? And what do FSH and LH do?
Those are...
When you're menstruating, what functions do those have?
They are both involved in the preparing of the follicle that's going to release an egg. From the ovary,
which is why it's called follicle stimulating hormone.
Right.
And what does the luteinizing hormone do?
Luteinizing hormone is also involved in that, and it spikes right at the time of ovulation.
Okay. Now, menopause isn't something that just kind of happens instantly, that you look back and say, oh, for a year I haven't menstruated.
Right.
It's something that happens quite slowly. It's not that your hormones drop all of a sudden on one day.
Right.
They kind of become irregular, is that right?
Right.
Over quite a long period of time.
That can happen. There are some women who stop abruptly and that's it. But many women have this irregularity begin to happen. They'll have a small flow of their menstrual blood. Then others will have very heavy flow. And depending on the woman and what's going on with her at the time, they can have either scenario. But the truth is that many of us, our ovaries begin to not do such a good job of producing that progesterone in the second half of the cycle. So that follicle that released the egg should be producing a good amount of progesterone. But the truth is, sometimes you have estrogen but no progesterone, because you don't ovulate or it doesn't do a good job of producing the progesterone. And that's one of the things that happens where we begin to feel the symptoms of perimenopause, is where we have too high estrogen, not opposed by the progesterone anymore.
And so we should define perimenopause, because a lot of women aren't. I think women today are pretty aware that there's a time in their life where they're perimenopausal.
Right.
But I think years ago, I mean, I don't think my mother, for example, or my mother's generation really understood that. Explain what perimenopause is.
Well, There are symptoms that begin in perimenopause, again, based on the imbalance of hormones that can occur. Your body may have symptoms such as hot flashes. You might have weight gain because there's unopposed estrogen. You might have heavier periods because
Explain what unopposed estrogen is.
No progesterone to balance out the estrogen. So that's the technical term that is behind a lot of the symptoms.
Interesting. Also, and since perimenopause for some women can last quite a number of years, that probably is one reason I know when they talk about women's fertility rates, that your fertility starts dropping off as early as the age of 27, that right. Women reach their peak of being able to become pregnant quite easily until they're 27, and then it drops off. I mean, right. Clearly women can become pregnant well into their 40s for some women,
right.
But it becomes more difficult, and I imagine it's because hormones become less regular, less rhythmic, less, and this would be what you refer to as perimenopause.
Right, right.
So just because you're menstruating doesn't mean it's going to be that easy to become pregnant or to be able to become pregnant at all, because the average age at menopause is about 51, is that right?
Yes, 50 or 51.
And you don't hear about women becoming pregnant at 48, 49, 50, 51. That would be a very, very rare occurrence, wouldn't it?
It is rare, but there are those babies, those
yes,
surprise babies.
There are.
Yeah.
But because of that, the way your hormones begin not to be quite so like clockwork when
right.
when you are menstruating,
right.
it becomes much more difficult to become pregnant. Let's talk about some of the symptoms of menopause and why they happen. And I think probably the most well-known symptom is, you've referred to it a number of times, hot flashes.
Right.
Why do women, and not all women experience it, I should say.
Right.
But why do some women?
And the estimate is approximately 50% of women going through menopause have noticeable hot flashes, and another percentage of those, maybe half, have really severe hot flashes. Hot flashes occur when the capillaries open up on the skin, and it's usually in the chest and the neck and the face area, the scalp. And in those areas, you then can have some redness. Definitely you feel really warm, like you want to take layers off. And it can be embarrassing for certain women because the coloration of your face, it looks like, you know, a very different appearance, and the sweating bothers them as well. This is where all the jokes of menopause tend to come in, you know, and women with little personal fans that they hold, and you know, those kinds of things. It's a reality that many women are going to have these symptoms. Some can deal with them very easily. Others need some help, and that's where we can urge you to talk to your doctor about what can be done.
And I think some women find it quite mild, and it wouldn't even occur to them
right.
to see a physician, that they wouldn't even define it as a medical problem.
Right.
And yet other women, and I wonder how much this has to do with culture, because in our culture, like you say, the jokes about menopause and hot flashes, that it's so defined as a medical problem,
right.
that many women will go to a doctor, whereas in other cultures, I don't even know if women notice it.